Hey everybody, this is Jeff, coming at you from the Writers' Cabin in Highland County, Virginia. I'm going to talk a little bit about the sycophants tonight and their responsibility. I'm Jeff. I'm a former 60 Minutes producer, former senior producer at National Geographic, and senior producer at Vice on HBO. Let's just go over the list of sycophants in the last couple weeks, and then I'll tell you what they all said. You got Joe Rogan. These are the people who are now coming out against a lot of the stuff that Trump is saying. Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, that deep thinking guy. We've got Mike Lindell, the pillow guy. Megyn Kelly, the journalist that she pretends to be. Mike Rogers from the House Armed Services Committee has been pretty upset with the way the war's been going because there's not getting enough people to talk about that in a real way. Nancy Mace, congressperson, Republican congressperson. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Eve Rupert Murdoch's newspaper is upset with them. That's just to name a few. But let's just talk about that for a minute. The people who, let's just go over what they had to say. Let's do that first. Joe Rogan. These people disgust me, by the way. These people disgust me. Joe Rogan on the Iran war said it seems so insane based on what he ran on, and calling it terrifying, exactly the opposite of what we were told leading into this administration. He said the Trump supporters feel betrayed by the war. He called negotiations with Iran a clusterfuck. I can't believe I'm actually agreeing with Joe Rogan tonight. Voices fear the war could get, quote, really ugly because that's how you start World War III. That deep thinking MMA mind of his. On the Epstein files, Rogan said, look at the Epstein files. The Epstein files come out. We go to war with Iran. It's a good way to get people to stop talking about certain things. Wow. I don't even have to listen to 3 hours of your podcast. Just read this quote. Are you doing? You're doing something, aren't you? Right? You're not on your normal Trump gummies. Yeah. On the AI Jesus thing, right? This thing yesterday where Trump is putting his hand on a man. It looks a little bit like Epstein. And, he said he was actually just acting as a doctor and helping a Red Cross nurse. And clearly it's a Jesus, godlike interpretation of Trump being, omnipotent. And Joe Rogan said that AI God has to come alive and take over the system. Yeah. It looks terrible for Trump. Looks terrible for Trump when he says that none of this was real. This is all a hoax. It's not a hoax. Did you not know? Maybe he didn't know if you want to be charitable. He also declared himself, Rogan did, politically homeless after breaking with Trump, saying he doesn't identify as either right-wing or left-wing anymore. Okay, let's just start with fucking Joe Rogan. I've been critical of him before. Joe, seriously, you're not going to get credit now. It's too late. It's too late. We appreciate it, but you're not going to get credit for this shit. Your friend Theo Vaughn was on with you recently, right? And Theo's been talking about, he said about Trump and the war, because the malicious prosecution of the war against Iran, killing school children and all this stuff. And Theo Vaughn said, that's crazy, though, if you're the fucking terrorists, meaning the United States. Quite a turn, Theo. And he said, I'm scared. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm scared, referring to what he sees as the New World Order. Theo Vaughn. All these deep thinkers coming out of the woodwork now. Alex Jones said Trump sounded like an unhinged supervillain from a Marvel comic movie and called him a rotting husk of the old Trump, saying, I will now stand against this new Trump, who by the day becomes more demonic, more twisted, and more sick. He also told Trump on air, President Trump, you promised to never let me down, but now you've let yourself down. I can just hear his voice coming out of me. Now you've let yourself down and America down. Oh, man. Here's another one. Mike Lindell. Remember that? The pillow guy? The pillow guy. He didn't really voice any major disappointment because that'd be impossible for him to do. But he did say that Lindell TV, that's a new thing now. It's got Lindell TV because I guess the pillow thing didn't work out for him. reportedly rejected Trump's Jesus image as, quote, unconvincing. I mean, that's coming from Mike Lindell. It's kind of a big thing. Then we got Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly, the pretend journalist, who has her own podcast now after leaving Fox. And now she's attacking Fox like, I've got a bunch of secrets to tell you about Fox. Like we fucking didn't know, Megyn. Megyn Kelly called Trump's Iran war threats completely irresponsible and disgusting. Asking, can he just behave like a normal human? She called the posting of himself as Jesus, quote, completely inappropriate, right? And blasphemous, because she's real religious. And said, getting so desperate for attention. She also said, I'm sick of this regarding his social media behavior. I'm sick of this. Mike Rogers, House Armed Services Committee. There's a couple of people in Congress who are actually taking note, not criticizing him personally. Mike Rogers in the House Armed Services Committee said the Pentagon briefings that Trump administration officials were given frustrated him, and they weren't getting enough answers about military plans. You figure? He also got rid of the Pentagon Press Corps over there, Pete Hegseth did. So, maybe if we had the Pentagon Press Corps, we'd be getting more information on the war. He said he wanted to know more about what's going on, the options are, and why they're being considered. And we're just not getting those answers out of the Trump administration. Nancy Mace, another Republican congresswoman, walked out of the briefing saying Trump wants Americans to die for the price of oil. That's a quote from her. She said the justification for the war presented publicly don't match the military, what the military actually briefed Congress on. Tucker Carlson. This is a pretty good list, right? Tucker Carlson called Trump a slave to Israel. Right on, Tucker. Shit, I'm starting not to hate your bow tie. He said his handling of the Iran war was awful to watch. Coming from a guy who has no military expertise, but I'll take it. We'll take it, right, guys? Misfits will take that. It was awful to watch. He called Trump's Easter post about wiping out a whole civilization, that's a quote from Trump, as vile on every level, okay? And accused Trump of threatening to commit war crimes. Not the only guy, but it's nice to see Tucker understands finally what a war crime is. When Trump called him a nut job, Carlson said he feels sorry for the president. I like that. I like that. That's something I would say. I feel sorry for you, Mr. Trump. Candace Owens, the other lunatic, who said that President Macron, the president of France, that his wife was transgender. So she's a great source for stories. Called Trump a genocidal lunatic. That's saying something coming from Candace, and said his post was so bad that, quote, only a fool would have would hit send on it. She accused Trump of losing touch with his base that helped him get elected. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who used to be in Congress but bailed on Congress after this past year, said she actually called for the 25th Amendment, which would remove Trump from office, a constitutional amendment that allows for the removal of the president from office if he's not fit to serve. She said that Trump's rhetoric wasn't, quote, tough rhetoric, it's insanity, and called him mentally unstable. Described his behavior as evil. Rupert Murdoch. This is good, huh? We're 8 minutes in. And these are all just people that used to be sycophants of Trump. Rupert Murdoch, he doesn't do his talking in public. He lets his news organizations like Fox and the Wall Street Journal and all the other ones do his talking for him. And his recent editorial board, which you can guarantee they're paying attention to what they write so they don't insult their boss. Said the editorial board has been critical of Trump since January this year. The Journal warned that Trump's chaos could tank Republicans in the midterms. That's what they're worried about. Mass deportations that were excessive and unpopular tariff flip-flopping. In February, after a Supreme Court ruling struck down Trump's tariff authority, the Journal called it arguably the worst moment of his presidency, writing that it was, quote, ugly even by Trump standards. So, that's some pretty... I'm going to even go back to 2024. John Kelly, remember him? Longest serving Trump chief of staff, retired 4-star general, pretty smart guy. Don't agree with his politics, but he's a pretty smart guy. You don't become a 4-star without being pretty smart. Interviews with the New York Times and the Atlantic, Kelly said, Trump certainly, quote, this is a quote, certainly falls into the general definition of a fascist. Okay, this is a pretty Republican dude. And remember, everybody's going to say I have Trump derangement syndrome, but all these people are Republicans, and they all loved Trump. He said that, Kelly said that Trump is certainly an authoritarian and that he, quote, prefers the dictator approach to government. Kelly also said Trump told him multiple times that, quote, Hitler did good things too. He described Trump as having nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law, and said Trump completely disparaged U.S. troops privately, calling them suckers and losers. All right, one more, just for good measure. This was Ty Cobb, not the baseball player who's dead now, but Ty Cobb, who was the White House counsel to Trump during his first term. Okay, he was the chief legal officer in the White House. Okay, advising the president on legal matters. Recently, Cobb has been pretty scathing. He was even on TV today. I was watching him go after him on MSNBC, or MS Now is what it's called now. He called Trump clearly insane and said he's mentally gone. Specifically cited Trump's Iran strategy, saying it was executed without consulting allies and against military advice. Cobb told journalist Jim Acosta, the former CNN corresponding with his own podcast now, very successful podcast, that the cabinet should invoke the 25th Amendment. He's jumping on there with Marjorie Taylor Greene, isn't he? It's not a surprise, given the fact that the cabinet will not invoke the 25th Amendment for a man who is clearly insane, and this war highlights that. He also said Trump, quote, fired Attorney General Pam Bondi because she wouldn't bring Trump the bleeding heads of his enemies on a platter like you wanted. Well, she tried. She tried it a lot. She just kept failing, which is what's going to happen when you try to charge somebody with something that's illegal. And even Andrew Schultz, the podcast guy, said that Trump's doing exactly the opposite of everything I voted for on war, spending, and the Epstein files release. So, okay, that's 11 minutes of people that are sycophants talking about President Trump. And the reason I'm frustrated is because with all these people, and none of these people are good people, frankly. They just said things that we agree with today. None of these people are good people. I mean, now, they've been starting to come out now. And some of them seem like, you know, Joe Rogan, like he's just discovering this. When everybody on the planet was telling him that this guy was evil and a piece of shit and he was lying to you, and he wasn't going to do what he said. And he feels betrayed, right? And we're listening to people like him and Theo Vaughn. He's got the brain cells of a, 5-year-old gerbil. At least Mike Rogers is saying something. He's a congressman, Congressman Mace, she's saying something. She's speaking up. But for the most part, these people are not, they've had a great deal of influence over the American public, especially MAGA. So I'm thankful that they're speaking up now, finally. But the things they're mad about, they're mad about him in the God AI meme. They're not really all that, most of them haven't been mad about like deporting people without cause, who haven't broken the law, many of which have not broken the law. They don't seem too upset about the spending us into oblivion. They don't seem too upset about his moral character, being convicted of sexual, civil cases of inappropriate sexual contact with E. Jean Carroll. They don't seem upset about that. They don't seem upset about, his sons and his companies harming the U.S. economy and enriching themselves. Not much about that. They are really fired up about the Jesus meme, though. And these people they knew who he was. If they didn't know who he was, please let them know that they're stupid. Ty Cobb, he's a smart lawyer, right? Why would you take a job with this guy, Ty? Coming out now and repairing your John Kelly. I have more respect for John Kelly than most people, and I don't really like the guy's politics, but he got out of there pretty quick, in that first administration. But these people should be speaking up more. John Kelly should be speaking up more. Admiral McCraven had some really interesting things to say about him during the first administration. I'd like to hear him speak up more. He was the admiral in charge of the raid that got bin Laden. Mike Lindell, we shouldn't care at all what Mike Lindell says because he lies and he's an idiot. But when the My Pillow guy, who's the biggest sycophant of this administration's saying, yeah, that wasn't right. Pay attention. Megyn Kelly, the pretend journalist. I mean, do we really think that you I don't even know where to start with you. You act like a reporter. You mostly have mean shit to say about people. And you're finally turning on Trump. Most of you people are only turning on Trump because you think he's going to lose the midterms. And you think they're going to not have control of Congress anymore. You're worried about power. You're not worried about people. You're not screaming about the Epstein files. Rogan says a little bit about it. Joe, you want to have a mea culpa. Start hammering him on your podcast every day about the Epstein files. Bring people on your podcast who are studying the Epstein files. Give them a voice. Let them talk about it. Don't sit back and woe's me. Marjorie Taylor Greene, you said you were going to read the names of those perpetrators on the floor of Congress, on the floor of the House of Representatives. You didn't do that before you left. Why? You know? So, yeah, I'm pissed off because everybody who had a brain in their head said this could have been avoided in 2015. You all call this Trump derangement syndrome. Start taking that phrase back, you know, and pointing it back on the MAGA people. They're the ones who are deranged. They're the ones who actually believed any of the shit coming out of his mouth. And they're awful quiet now about the Epstein files. They were really quiet about the Texas congressman who had an affair, and the woman he had an affair with killed herself for like a month. Nothing happened until, you know, a Democratic congressman resigned this morning, and then he had to, you know what I mean? Like, you guys, you're protecting all these sick fucks. You're still protecting them, by the way, by not calling for his resignation, by not calling for a release of the files, by allowing people within the Justice Department to do malicious prosecutions because they are really trying to put the focus on the Epstein files, where there's 1.5 to 3 million files that still haven't been released, depending on who you believe. Put the onus back on them. These negotiations with Iran, you put the 3 biggest morons on the negotiating block to talk to the Iranians, who are smart. They're talking to people who have doctorates. And then you've got these 2 idiot real estate guys and a vice president has had 4 or 5 different names. Nobody knows who the fucking guy is. Hillbilly, whatever he thinks he is. Come on, man. You guys, okay, I'll give you a little bit of credit for coming out and attacking him. Finally, after you called us all Trump deranged, you fucking people were the Trump deranged for believing anything he said. And some of you never believed what he said, but you wanted the power, so you went along with it. And the thing that frustrates me is none of you motherfuckers have any clout, because now we know you're frauds. But you have no political clout either. The people should be standing up and saying this stuff, you know, like Mike Johnson and all the people in the House of Representatives. You know, you have a couple in the Senate, they're on their way out. Of course, they're going to talk because they're on their way out. They don't have to worry about Trump primarying against them. You people have a lot of nerve. If you want to make right, all you people start telling your Republican congressmen and senators that they need to start thinking about removing this lunatic from office. Misfits, like, follow, and share. If you like what we're doing, go to our Substack. Hit me up for a paid subscription. Help me feed these dogs over here. Dixie and George. I don't know where George is. I think he's outside on the patio. Thanks, everybody. Keep your head up. You know, tomorrow's a new day. From the Writer's Cabin, this is Jeff. Take care. Have a good night.